Hey, this is my open world game Craven. This month, I worked towards implementing dialogues. But first, let me talk about the points leading up to it. Picking up from last devlog, first order of business is to make grass work with this object scattering library called Proton Scatter. To recap, I used custom instance data to align the grass blades normal with the ground, so it looks crisp and uniform. The problem is that I can't set the custom instance data if I use Proton Scatter because of nuances in how it works. From here, my choices were use another plugin, which I don't wanna because I honestly really like Proton Scatter, or make my own plugin for scattering grass specifically. I really wanted to avoid this because it usually turns into an optimizing hell, and honestly I've had enough of it. And then I had a realization. What if, in the grass shader, I just infer the ground normal? I could rotate the grass to the ground, and in the shader, just transform the local up vector to global coordinates, and boom, I just have the ground normal. In computer graphics, the normal points away from the surface, right? And there's also these two handy vectors called the tangent and the bitangent, also known as the binormal, that kinda go with the surface. In my case, binormals happen to point upwards. And boom, it just worked right off the bat. I don't know why I didn't think of doing this earlier. Next, it's time to work on triggers. We can't really talk to NPCs and stuff without first having triggers to interact with. This will also be useful for stuff like item pickups or general interactions with the world, so I want to make it robust and general purpose. In Godot, we already have a sort of trigger in the form of area 3Ds, but you often want them to be input activated. This is usually pretty trivial, but there's this problem that arises when the player is hovering over two triggers at once. Let's say we give a prompt when the player enters the area and remove it when the player leaves it. Simple, right? If you go into one area, everything works fine. If you go into both these areas, suddenly this first one is overwritten and completely ignored. And if you leave this area, it's like if you weren't in the first one to begin with. So I figured it would be better to keep track of hovered areas deterministically. So I have a static array here in the trigger class that works like a stack. Whenever a trigger is hovered or unhovered, we update this list to reflect the state. And whenever the list changes, we clear and update the button prompts accordingly. And of course, a trigger only listens for inputs if it's at the top of the stack. Anyways, now that we have triggers, we can initiate dialogues. I'm gonna use this plugin called Clyde for that. I think it's a nice middle ground between doing everything yourself from scratch and having an add-on do everything for you automatically. Out of the box, the player can still move around even while in dialogue, so I pause the scene while the dialogue is open. By the way, I keep getting these cannot get class Clyde dialogue file errors. This seems to be caused by how Godot tries to load the Clyde dialogue files before the custom resource is defined. I'm not really sure how this works internally, but for now I'm just dealing with it. Anyways, honorable mentions include stepping upstairs. And also I made this component that helps manage story progress. You write an expression to check, and it evaluates it whenever a variable changes in the story manager singleton. And when the state changes, it just fires some signals which I can wire up to whatever I want, like making this box disappear. Anyways, that's about it for this video. Now that the boring stuff is mostly out of the way, next video will be about world building and game feel, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, I hope you learned something. See you next time.